World War II shaped the lives of a generation. The war broke families apart, brought communities together, and turned a depressed economy into an industrial machine. On the home front, citizens sold war bonds and collected scrap metal for the factories. Friends were made and lost as a generation of boys was sent into combat. Penn State Public Broadcasting invited those who lived this history to share their stories of World War II.
My name is Ralph Shope, and it's spelled R-A-L-P-H, S-H-O-P-E. I'm the son of a father who was a veteran. It was called the war in 1944, and he was 28 years old, and I was 8 years old when he went into the service, and I have some very vivid memories of that. I had a kind, loving father, and I can just imagine how it would be for him to say goodbye to two sons and maybe never see him again. I can remember very vividly when my father was called to war. My mother didn't drive, and we lived in the country in the sticks, Holtz Hollow. And my father had to move us to Milesburg because my mother didn't drive, and my father's brother also went into the war at the same time. So we, as a family, stayed in the same place in Milesburg. And I can vividly remember taking my father to the Altoona train station. And I can remember him that when we went to the train station, they closed the gates, and at that time. And I can still see my father waving goodbye to me. It sticks with me to this day. I'm 63 years ago, and still that's the scars that it caused for a child at that time. And every time they played Anchors Away, I'd cry. As a matter of fact, I still have his Gary's dog tags.
Sure.
See if we can get it.
Which one's yours and which one's
Well, this is my father's, and this is mine. They've changed them in 15 years. During that time, we were very patriotic. I mean, I even was so patriotic that the minute I got out of high school, I joined the service. In that era, that's the way it was. I mean, you were patriotic and you wanted to serve your country. I can remember we used to, as a kid, I used to go around the neighborhood in Milesburg and gather up rags and donate rags to the people that would come around. And then also, if we found metal of any kind, we would salvage it, and they'd come and pick it up. I can remember very vividly the air raids that they used to have, practice air raids, and you would think the Japs were going to come bomb you. And we had flashlights that we'd have little cellophane, green cellophane that we'd put over the lens, and that's the way we would get around it when they had the air raids. I also remember very vividly coming home from school every night. I'd look in the window. We had a flag that it signified that my father was in the service. And I always come home, I'd always check to make sure we didn't have a gold star on the flag in the window, because that meant he was killed. Sometimes two officers would come to the door with their, tell the family that their husband or son was killed in action. And whenever you saw a military car come up and those officers would get out, you knew that was bad news, really bad news. So I always watched to make sure they didn't stop at our door. Well, it was close-knit. They all stuck together, and they would share. If things were rationed at that time, and sometimes maybe the neighbor wouldn't have sugar, ran out of sugar or something, and they would share that. And of course, we were on a salary of a serviceman. It wasn't very much, and she improvised a lot in making things, and that's how she learned to cook. And I can remember this very vividly. The letters were censored, and he would tell my mom where he was. It would be cut out. There was no. They'd take a razor or something and cut these sentences out, and so the letter had holes in it. They were always asking how we were and if we were being good to my mother and if we were helping her out, and things like of that nature. I was always happy to read the letter. My mom read the letters to us. My experience was nothing compared to my uncles and my father and my uncles, because they were actually in it. And I heard stories from them. Now, they never spoke much about their actual killings, but I knew they killed Japanese and Germans. I know they did. Otherwise, they would not have had the emotions that they had. I remember my one uncle saying one thing, and that was it, that he had to kill a Jap in a foxhole that crawled in with him. So you can imagine that emotion. My one uncle I know very much. He was in the Philippines, in Guam, and he saw action, and at night he would have to get up and walk the golf course. Well, for years he would have to get up. He'd have nightmares. The three of the uncles that were in the service were in combat. They were right in the front lines. Fortunately, our family was, God bless, because they all came back. My father hardly ever spoke about the war. He was on a destroyer boat called the USS Tills, and he was involved in support. I guess what they did was their boats convoyed the battleships into the beachheads and places. But my father didn't speak too much of the war. We were asleep, and of course my brother and I slept in the same bed. So I can remember very distinctly he coming in and waking us and hugging us, and we were happy. I couldn't sleep the rest of the night because of that. Can you imagine what my father felt like? That's why I'm here. I don't need this emotional roller coaster, but I thought I would share it with people who would understand. Maybe some people wouldn't understand my emotions, but it affected me. You can tell. And then after the war, before he came home, we had the kids had catty 9-tills, and we soaked them in kerosene. And when there was a VJ day, we lit those catty 9-tills and walked up and down the street hollering and hooping, as kids would do, because the war was over then. We were very happy about that.